Hello and welcome back to the Real Estate Roundup podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be giving you guys an update on the NAR settlement lawsuit changes to the real estate agent compensation. And it's been a couple of weeks, and we're seeing a lot of different questions, different holdups, misinterpretations, different interpretations, all of that together in the marketplace, in the real estate industry. And we just want to clear up some things for you guys if you have any confusions, any questions, or any holdups on what are the best practices moving forward. So my name is Kobe Zinn, and I'm joined here by my co-hosts Tony Flores and Andres Martinez, both professional real estate experts here in the great state of Texas. How are you guys doing today?
Awesome.
Yeah, so just from my interpretation in this past couple of weeks, it's actually been, not it's been a good couple of weeks in real estate recently. Would you guys say that's the case as well, just from your experience?
For sure.
Yes, I do see the sense of it starting to pick up again. I think people that have been on the sideline are back out. And then as far as on the realtor side, uh, we have had a lot of questions as well, right?
Yeah, yes, we have, and same thing for you, Tony. Is that what you've seen as well in the industry as a whole? People are beginning to pick back up their activity.
Yes, they are. They're starting to, we're engaged more on, what's happening in the market. They're trying to find out the best information. And so definitely love to have those kind of questions and engage in those types of conversations because at the end of the day, people are want to do what's best for themselves. And sometimes they may not know that right now is actually a really good time to make offers on properties.
Right. Yeah. So as you get more questions, it means there's actually more activity, right? People are actually curious because they want to make moves and see what's going to happen here and in the future moving forward. But let's just start out right with addressing some of the things that maybe you guys have seen in the marketplace, whether if it's from consumers, right, buyers or sellers, or other agents that you're working with. As far as just what are some of the misconceptions? What are some of the biggest holdups for people regarding these changes that's happened with the NAR settlement that was launched back in August the 17th? And what are the biggest challenges people are facing now trying to interpret these rules and these new changes moving forward? So we'll start out with your opinion, Tony, and then we will get your take on this.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about the NAR settlement is there's been so much different types of interpretation, and even in some of the publications that have come out, the information is not crystal clear because there's certainly some nuances to it, like you know how does the buyer's agent get compensated, and what options would they have if they're putting in an offer. I'm seeing some social media posts from some very, very good real estate agents, and they're putting out information that actually is not true. Now, that's unintentional, I'm sure, because as an agent, you have a duty of, or you have a responsibility of honesty and fairness. But what they interpret or what they've been told is actually wrong. So, one of the videos that I saw from a very successful and very solid agent was that he was getting an incoming call about a listing that he had. So he's representing the seller in this property, and someone's calling him saying, I want to see the property. And he's telling that person, you need to sign a buyer's agent rep with me in order for me to show it to you. So that is actually incorrect. When you are the listing agent, you are allowed to show that property to the consumer. Now, if that consumer is, if that person is what's called, we call them a customer if they have not signed an agreement. They're a client if they have signed an agreement. If they already have representation from an agent, if they've already signed a buyer agreement with an agent, they should be having their agent contact that realtor. If they haven't, if they don't have a buyer's rep agreement with their realtor, they are allowed to be shown that property from the listing agent without an agreement in place. And this is also similar if if you want to go to an open house and there's an agent present, it's not required that you sign something, because I actually went to a training about open houses coming up right a week before the settlement was in effect. This was a little early in August, and that person that was training said they need to sign a buyer's rep agreement before they go enter that open house. That is also wrong. That is not required to show an open house. When you go in there, it's an open house, and you are allowed to see that house without another agent being present. So there's some, again, some great agents, but they're getting information, conflicting information, and the way they have heard it is actually wrong. So I'm just trying to want to clarify that. Those are some big tips as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's important that you get the right information, right? And the biggest problem I think you mentioned as well is that even from these publications, right? I've seen where, in a like the local real estate agent association and the Texas statewide association actually have differing opinions sometimes based on their interpretation. So we're gonna touch back on this topic a little bit later as well on where to get the best information. But Andres, same thing for you. Are you seeing some misinterpretations of just what these NAR settlement changes are entail, or are you seeing different agents or different people in the marketplace interpreting these rules differently just based on kind of their viewpoint and their perspectives?
So as far as on my end, what I did receive in the early month of August, when the law came into effect and the rule changes happened, agents were calling me and they were asking me did they need a buyer's rep specifically if they were showing one, two, three, up to five houses. I told them that as far as for that, that was something that it was between them and their client and something that their brokerage, right? So a lot of brokerages have put out documents and made documents so they could be in compliance. Um, so I told him as far as for on the new build side, we hadn't had any changes because the agreement of representation was going to be between the realtor and the client as far as their compensation. But as far as the new build, for us, it was just business as usual.
Yeah, and that's one of the positive things, right? With these changes, or one of the things that didn't really change too much was if you're a real estate agent representing a potential buyer going to a new construction community, there wasn't a lot of changes that's happening in that side because obviously you guys are not necessarily the listing agent representing anybody. You guys are representing yourselves, right, as the builder and as the new build community as well. So that's very that's very I guess fear pushing down a lot of fear for a lot of agents out there, right, who may be representing buyers, that there is still a path forward on that side. But kind of back to you, Tony, you mentioned that there's some conflicting sources even as far as interpreting these rules of these new NAR settlement changes for agent compensation. So what would you say are some of the best places for real estate professionals and those who are in the market to buy or sell real estate to get the most accurate and the most updated information, aside from this podcast, that is?
Well, NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, actually has a website, and there's some facts right there. So there's a long list of facts, but it answers so many different questions, and it's probably the best source that I've seen for different scenarios. So I want to make sure that we actually include that link here in our podcast and our YouTube channel so that you can kind of see what that looks like. And as I've noticed, they've actually had some updates since it was first published. So I imagine they're going to continue to do updates on that. And so it's on NAR NAR.realtor, I believe, but we'll put the link here. It's a great source. And unfortunately, one of the posts I did, it was like, you just can't trust that the news sources that we're getting, even like the type of headline news, they come in and they have some shocking commissions and this. So there's so much that they said. They said, for instance, real estate commissions are now going to be negotiable, and that is actually they've always been negotiable. They've always been negotiable. Now there's just a delineation of those commissions where the seller's rep gets their commission, or the buyer's rep gets their commission, and at the end of the day, it all becomes part of the purchase price. It all becomes part of the negotiation. It does add a layer of negotiation in there to make sure everyone sees it. It's very clear, and there's no misunderstandings about it. We do have here in Texas, we have a form that will get filled out. When you fill out a purchase, you have the purchase agreement and you have addendums likely that typically go with them. It could be a seller financing addendum, it could be third party financing addendum, it could be a repair addendum, and the addendum we have is for broker commission and how that gets paid. It could be a seller credit, it could be lots of different ways. So there's always a way to get this done. The main thing with the lawsuit is they wanted to take away the broker to broker sharing of that commission. So they wanted to separate that into two different piles so that people can see what's
right. So that's another good point as well, right? Instead of it being broker to broker commission, you're sharing it, it's directly from the seller or directly from the buyer, right? So I know that was the biggest change, as far as like seeing the verbiage on those contracts, right? What are some of the changes going on? But that's a great point. We have to go directly to the source, right, to get the most accurate information, and we'll make sure to leave the link to that article that you were talking about, Tony, here in the description down below, so that you guys can check that out if you have any questions, or want to go directly to the source to get the most accurate information. But a question for you, Andres, on the new build side. You mentioned that it's pretty much been business as usual. Just in the past couple of weeks, I know it's not been like a super long time, but have you seen more agents and more buyers approach new build communities? Because one of the biggest questions that one of the biggest things that I've seen, just kind of that's out there, is there's a lot of buyers who are asking agents directly to check for them whether or not that is, if they're going to a pre-existing home that they're buying. They're asking the agent to check for them before they even tour the home whether or not the sellers are going to be covering their buyer's agent commission. And if they're not, they might not even want to tour the home, right? So it's actually coming directly from the buyers. Now on the new construction side, obviously it's a little bit different, right? You guys are making sure that you're compensating the agents. Have you seen that actually make a change as far as more buyers are going and approaching new construction communities, and they're more drawn towards that because it's more cost effective for them?
So this August, it was a little bit of I don't know. I don't want to put out wrong information as well, right? So there was an uptick in people visiting the community, but I don't know if it was specifically uh, because of the NAR law or because interest rates have trended down. So we have seen a lot of activity. The one feedback I can give is that there's people that are being represented that are showing up, which is a positive thing, right? So people are still believing in their realtors. They're still there's still the need for them to be represented. So what I did see is I did see a lot of people still show up with realtors, and then we always in our spectrum of real estate, we always had people that did not have a realtor. Either way, they both get service well. It just depends to like preference.
Yeah, so that's that makes sense, right? Obviously, with the interest rates ticking down, people are just going to be more active in the marketplace as well. And you guys can definitely go check out our previous episode where we talk a little bit more on that and the effects of that as well from last week. But similar question for you, Tony. Have you seen different buyers in the marketplace have that request for their agents where, they want you to go ahead and check check for them on the listing side if the listing agent is actually going to be paying the buyer's agent commission. And when they are asking these questions, what are some of the conversations that you're having with the buyers, or you will potentially have with the buyers, if that is part of that request? Because, things happen, right? There is a lot of people who are they're afraid, or they just want to make sure they're covered before they even jump into a situation.
Yeah. So the buyers, the main thing is the buyers want to know, um, the houses that they're interested in, are they affordable to them? With including the down payment, the closing costs, those types of things. If we're selling a house and then buying a house, typically when they're in that position, they're going to have equity coming out of that other property. They have some money freed up, and a lot of it's usually applied to the new balance. So what they just want to make sure is if they just want to make sure that they're getting a good deal on the house, and a good deal could just be a fair deal, right? So what my conversations is just hey, this is what's going to happen moving forward. And sometimes the sellers will be offering a commission applied, and that will be credited at closing. And other times it might not cover my full fee. If that's the case, then there might be a little bit over, and that would be added potentially to that would, one, it could be added to the closing cost, or two, it could be potentially rolled into a loan in some cases. Three, my goal is really to try to get my fees covered through the purchase agreement. I want to try to get it covered. Lots of times, and just like in the past, we've asked for the seller to pay for closing costs, or we'll ask the seller to pay for a home warranty. We'll ask the seller to pay for repairs or things like that. So this is just another part of that cluster that we would ask for. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of homes that have been sitting on the market for a long time, and right now is a great time to buy. So if this is the best deal that they have moving forward, that they're going to cover all of my fees or any overages from what they thought they were going to pay and what they actually would pay in my offer, then more than likely they're going to take it, and they, at the end of the day, they need to feel like they accomplished something. They got the house sold. They were able to win on that front. And at the end of the day, everyone's got to be happy with the deal. So if they're not happy, they're not going to sign the agreement. But we certainly, if someone's not willing to budge on that, then there's so many other sellers that would be able to budge right now at this time. It's not a seller's market right now; it's a buyer's market.
Yeah, so it's very interesting to see how the market has just kind of worked itself out, right? So a lot of the concerns, or what are the agents going to do now that these changes have come into play? Well, actually the consumers themselves are requesting the agents go check to see whether or not they have to be paying the commissions out of pocket as well. So it's very interesting to see just some of the changes, the changes in consumer behavior, I would say. So the same kind of question over for you, Andres. You've been an agent before as well, and we definitely don't want a situation where real estate agents are necessarily steering their clients one way or another. And that's kind of back to what we're saying, is kind of the opposite of that, right? Where the clients are asking the agents to they're steering the agents in a certain direction, in order to make sure they're able to afford the home that if they're buying, they can actually get into. So just from your experience as an agent, what are some of the best practices you would say as a real estate agent they should be doing now with a lot of these conversations they're having with potential buyers, but maybe even potential sellers as well, seeing whether or not they will want to actually cover the buyer agent side compensation, because a lot of sellers on the flip side of that don't want to do that either.
So, like Tony said, we're not in the seller's market. The market went through a self correction. And the thing is, inventory, I believe last time I checked was about 4.5 months. Depending on each one's market, it could differ. But anytime that I've ever presented anything to a seller or buyer, I've always given them options. And when I present to them the value of each option, um, there could be a value to paying your buyer's commission, right? If you want to sell uh, at the quickest time, that can motivate uh, a realtor to bring uh, a client to your home. Should that happen? No. Does it happen? It probably does, right? Uh, but it can also motivate the buyer because that's one layer or one expense they don't have to worry about. So before, a lot of people would think, well, maybe the realtor is influencing. No, the influencer, I mean, the realtor has to give the information to the buyer, and that information at this point, moving forward, it benefits the buyer. So by giving that information, this you paying for that buyer's realtor's commission is an added benefit, and your house just became more marketable. So there's different things that, as when I was a realtor, right, that you would show your clients, like, these are the benefits, right? Hey, if you're buying a home, they're going to pay the closing costs. They're willing to pay all repairs. And then there was a time when it was a seller's market where a lot of those things we didn't have to do at that specific time. So just going down the line and just showing the value of what's either being marketed as a seller or as a buyer, what could benefit the buyer. So just understanding the value of each specific thing being offered when a person's selling a home.
Yeah, exactly. I like that you said that it's not the agents who are influencing the consumers, right? Actually, from what we've seen, is quite the opposite. It's almost the consumers are influencing the agents.
Well,
right?
they want to keep as much money in their pocket as possible. So what people need to understand, that there was a very, very fine line before the interest rates went up, and then it just got a little bit tougher once the interest rates went up. So there was a lot of people on the fence when the interest rates went down that barely qualified. Interest rates went up, now they don't qualify. And then some people are always going to, even some people work every day, 10 years, save enough money for a down payment, and they have sufficient funds to pay for the down payment. That's why closing costs was negotiated before, right? So now, like Tony said, there's an added layer. Now we're talking about the buyer's commission. At this point, it could make that person that could barely qualify, that could barely purchase that home. And when I say barely, I'm talking about upfront costs, because they have the needs to make their monthly payment and they can live comfortably. They just don't have expendable money to add to the down payment. So that's one thing that people have to understand. Making it affordable for the people that are right on that line, which is a very big percentage of people buying homes at the moment.
And the more affordable you can make your home if you're selling it, right, the bigger you open up the marketplace of potential buyers, right? The higher price. I mean, just kind of giving the example, right? The higher price point your home is, right? It's not necessarily this specific example, but if you have a higher price point home, you're just automatically going to have a smaller pool of buyers that are even going to be able to potentially buy your home, that are even going to be qualified or even have enough down payment, right? So the same thing goes for this specific example here, right? If you're able to make it easier for somebody, even if it's just a couple $1,000s here or there and the closing costs, you can actually potentially open up your pool of buyers to a lot more people just because they're actually able to afford your home versus somebody else who's not doing the same thing, maybe in a similar market as you. So just to kind of wrap up here, Tony, I would love to kind of get your take now on what are some of the best practices moving forward, right? Because there's a lot of interpretations different people interpreting different things, right? A lot of information that may or may not be true, but being put out there on social media in conversations with consumers, with other agents as well. So as somebody who is either buying or selling, or even if you're a real estate agent wanting to make sure that you're absolutely following the rules, what are some of the best practices to make sure that whether if they're being told something, they make sure that they check as the accurate information, or to move forward knowing that you're doing the right thing and you're doing it all kind of according to the new rules that are in place moving forward in the real estate industry.
Yeah. So my just to kind of recap, what I believe is work with an agent who you feel is very familiar with the way the new laws are in place, and actually it's really a matter of policy. We say it's a law, but it's really a matter of policy. So work with an agent you feel comfortable, is familiar, is well versed in, and see how they can kind of explain how this all works for you. And the other thing is, when someone's looking to purchase a house, they'll give me a price, right? And what I do typically is I look at that price and I just widen it out. That they want a price, they want a price point from here to there. I typically will open that up even on the lower end and on the higher end, because we don't know that these properties on the higher end could possibly be they're could be motivated. They could have been on the market longer, and maybe someone just needs to get out. So those things, those come into play in the same way. So typically someone's not exactly looking at one specific price range because they need to have some variety. So the main thing is, if they have, certainly they'll have a upfront down payment, what they can actually put towards the loan. We need to make sure that we're very cognizant of that, and we want to be in that price range, right? We need to be in that price range. So we don't want to stretch them financially, because purchasing a home is not, is a long-term thing, and we don't want to put them in a predicament where they don't feel like they have a little bit of freedom in their savings and their checking accounts. So get with an agent who you feel can negotiate their commission within the scope of the price range that you're looking at. And as far as going from one property to another, when people say, what commission is the seller offering, it's possible that they'll change their mind. So we can always just ask, this is the offer. If this is the house that you like the most, this is the offer that's going to be put forward. If they accept it, then wonderful. If not, we can move on, because there is a lot of inventory on hand. Pre-existing home and new homes, there's lots to choose from. There's going to be something in your price range with your budget, so we can certainly get these things negotiated at at that time. And certainly there's lots of flexible sellers right now in the market.
Yep, absolutely. So just making sure that you're working with somebody who understands all of these changes, who understands what are the best ways to move forward, and not be deterred or scared by some of these changes, right? Because like we said, everything in real estate is negotiable, right? Including the offers that you're making. You can make an offer, right? Like you mentioned, stretching out the price point. You can make an offer that's lower, and they can take it, right? Just because it's a listing price doesn't mean that it's the going price for the property. So yeah. So Andres, is there any last thoughts that you want to add to that? Anything you want to add before we wrap up here today?
Yes, just whenever purchasing a home, make sure you deal with a real estate professional that educates themselves, that's always trying to give you the best value. A person that's going to invest, right? Uh, a real estate professional that kind of asks you the questions that you're like, why do you want to know that? Well, maybe they're trying to understand your overall living situation, so they could prepare the best situation for you moving forward, right? They don't, like Tony said, they don't want to. The term that I've always heard since I got into real estate market was house poor, right? You don't want to live beyond your means. You want to be able to live comfortably so you could maintain your home, gain equity, and live happy, right? So get with someone that's going to be able to find the best value for you to live comfortably and move forward with the home that you fall in love with.
That's great advice. So appreciate you guys. You guys shared a ton of great information here today over some of the new NAR settlement changes to the real estate industry, especially when it comes to agent compensation, and really brought us a good update and overview of how to move forward, how to protect yourself, and really how to interpret these new changes moving forward, so that way you can get to your goals in real estate and make the best path forward as well. So if you guys are interested in buying or selling a home, or if you're a real estate agent looking to get more information, looking to work and get mentored by people who are actually in the business, who are actually doing this, who understand the changes, make sure to reach out to either Andres or Tony, and I'll have their contact information in the description down below. If you guys are in the Texas market around the San Antonio area, they will be able to help you out directly. If you guys are in a different market listening to this podcast, they'll be able to help you find a qualified professional agent to help you in that market as well. So make sure to reach out to them. They're well connected, and they're really experienced in the real estate industry, as well, as you can obviously tell from our conversations. But other than that, appreciate you guys. Appreciate you for tuning into the Real Estate Roundup, and we'll see you in the next show. Take care.